The name I'm about to tell you is an alias, as due to safety reasons, I can't disclose my real name, so I'll identify myself as Smith in this story. What I'm about to tell you is a recollection of the numerous horrible events that happened to me when I was 19 years old. I used to be a hacker when I was 16. I had a strong passion for the dark side of the internet. It started with little things like phishing and keylogging, but it didn't take long before I became a full-blown black hat hacker. I was hired by people to intercept business transactions and steal the money from them. By doing this, I was inevitably led to the dark web. The more jobs I did, the more my reputation increased, and I dropped out of school and I moved out when I was 18. I didn't keep in contact with my family, as I realized doing things like this would cause problems. But even knowing the dangers of doing it, I continued, as I loved it. Well, I loved it, till November 9th, 2011. I was 19 at the time, and I'd gotten a job to intercept a dealing between the Russian mob and a weapons dealer. So what I did was recreate a fake site on the dark web and pose as the actual dealer to get the money they were paying for the weapons. The procedure went as planned, like every other one I had done before. Now, after taking the money, I gave it to the person who employed me, and I was given 10% as per the agreement. Now, I didn't know who the people who employed me were, and neither did they know who I was. As with dealing with anything on the dark side of the web, identities are always kept a secret. After finishing the process, I remember my employer sending me a message that said, "I suggest you run." It was a bit ominous, as nothing was said after that. So then I asked, "What do you mean?" My employer then replied, "We've messed with the Russian mob. Nobody ever comes back from that. That's why no one accepted this job, and I was shocked when you did." The last message my employer sent to me that night was, "This is the last message I'll ever send to you. For safety reasons, we can't be in contact. The job is done, and thank you for your services." Now, this was also a normal thing with communications on the dark web, as once a job was done, there were no more pleasantries. I remember going to bed that night with the words of my employer ringing in my head. "I suggest you run." So I decided to boost my security even more and take no chances. And after doing that, I felt completely safe, but there was still a part of me that knew I wasn't safe enough. After 2 weeks passed, I'd completely forgotten about the ordeal, but that's when something odd happened. I'd gotten a message from my last employer, the one who I did the Russian job for. Now, this was odd, as it had never happened before, and as I said, once a job was done, there were no more communications. But as soon as I saw the message, I knew it wasn't the same person, as it read, "The same way we found him is the same way we'll find you. The same way we made him suffer is the same way we'll make you suffer. We are coming." I felt my heart in my throat as fear filled me. I quickly relocated that week to another location. I'd been doing these dark web jobs for a while now, and I had plenty of money to be able to finance it. But on the day I moved, I had received my first package at my new apartment, and there was a note on it that read, "To celebrate your moving in, we give you..." And the last word was in Russian, so I had to Google it, and it meant confetti. I was petrified to open the box, but I pushed myself to do it, and what I saw inside scarred me for life. At a first glance, it looked like shredded meat, but the more I looked, the more I realized it was a shredded human being. I could see some fingers and an eyeball in the box. I remember screaming as I backed away from the box. I didn't sleep there that night, and I booked a hotel. The fear was paralyzing, as I knew they were following me, but I didn't want to die, so I decided to keep moving. I jumped from hotel to hotel before I found a discreet place to stay, and this time nothing happened for a few days. But it wasn't even a week before I got another box. This time the note read, "Even with all these fingers, I can't count how much you stole from us. Maybe you can count." and there was another word in Russian. It meant happy counting. This time, I didn't need to open the box to know what was inside. But I did. And I saw 16 bloody fingers all piled on top of each other. I felt like I had hit a dead end. I couldn't go to the cops as I wasn't exactly an outstanding citizen. And I didn't know what else to do, as moving to different apartments clearly wasn't working. So I decided to move to another state. Doing all of this made me so stressed as I was losing a lot of money and a lot of sleep, but I was determined not to be found. I eventually moved to a place where no one knew me. I had stopped hacking, and I decided to live off the earnings I had made. A month passed by, and I thought I was safe. But coming home one night, I saw a letter on the floor at my door. This time it read, "Since you've been moving a lot, we knew you wouldn't have time for..." Another damn Russian word, which translated to redecorating. I opened my door to see my house decorated in human body parts. The arm of a child was hanging above my fireplace. Human legs were placed on my table, and human hands were dangling from the ceiling fan. The more I looked, the worse it got, as my home now looked like a house of horrors. I couldn't take it anymore, and I had a mini mental breakdown. I fell to the floor screaming, and as I was about to get up, I heard a voice that pulled me out of my head. "I love seeing a man break." The voice had a thick accent, and before I could turn around, a searing pain shot through my body as the blade of a machete connected with my shoulder. Instinctively, I got up from the floor and turned to face my attacker. I couldn't see his face, but from his silhouette I could tell he was a huge man. "You stole from the wrong people, kid. Judging from how many times you've moved, I'm assuming you don't have the money. I was told to find you, break you, and then take you back in pieces. And I've done all that, aside from the last part. So brace yourself, kid." And that's exactly what I did. As he rapidly came at me, I held tight to the table as I switched direction, and he twisted towards me, the slick blood under his feet causing him to slip and crack his head on the mantel. As he fell to the floor, I bolted out of the house and into the cold streets below. I was tired of running, so I took my injured, blood-stained self into the police station, as I had nowhere else to go. I was taken straight to the hospital, and I told them everything. Detectives were dispatched to investigate, and for the next few weeks, I was under the protection of the cops. Soon after, I was sat down with a senior inspector and was told just how lucky I was to be alive after getting into some really deep trouble with some really bad people. They were notorious for torturing and killing those who crossed them or got in their way. I remember saying, "At least nothing happened to me, and I got out with my life." And that's when the inspector looked at me in shock and said, "So, you don't know?" I was confused, and I asked him, "Is there something I'm supposed to know?" And that's when he gave me the horrific news. He went on to tell me, "The bodies that were retrieved from every place you moved to were identified, and each of them was a member of your family. The shredded corpse was identified as your mother. The fingers found belonged to your siblings, and the bodies used to decorate your house were all parts of your cousins, aunties, and even your grandparents. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, but they wiped out your entire family trying to get to you." I began to cry as regret filled me. I didn't know. I had lost contact with them, and I truly believed the bodies had belonged to strangers. As I cried, I realized that I had single-handedly ruined the lives of every one of my family members, and I was condemned to bear the guilt for the rest of my days. 10 years have passed since this incident, and I've been living under witness protection. I'm completely alone, depressed, and I'm left with nothing but a huge scar on my shoulder as a souvenir from my past. I decided to anonymously tell my story, in hopes of finding some relief, but even then it's changed nothing, as I still carry the guilt. To whoever is seeing this, don't mess with the dark web. But I know human beings are curious creatures, and they're bound to check it out. Well, that's your choice. But if you aren't careful, one day you may be the one telling a story similar to mine.